Yeah, so this is a video from R&D Thursday. 2.4 million views, came out 1 year ago. This is a guy who is not a Dead by Daylight content creator. So we're going to see what is the game like from an outside perspective.
In the vast universe of gaming, plenty of franchises have been declared imbalanced, rightfully so or not. But with all the hate that these games receive, there can only be one that sits upon the throne of salt and be crowned. In this video, we're not just exploring a game, we're exploring a phenomenon, an aberration, a creation that, intentionally or not, might never be balanced. This is the untold story of Dead by Daylight. Games like League of Legends, Dota, Counter-Strike, Fortnite, and many others have all faced balancing challenges in the past. Certain characters, items, or other mechanics can be wildly overtuned and create a horrible environment for anyone playing against it. However, the one thing all of these games have going for them is that the players are all using the same fundamental rules. Dota, for example, pits two teams against each other in a race to see who can destroy the opponent's main structure, the Ancient, first. Both teams must kill other players, destroy towers, complete side objectives, and push down similar-looking lanes. Even though your heroes and roles might be different, the goal and main gameplay mechanics remain the same for everyone. This is called soft asymmetry. Strong asymmetric games are like Left 4 Dead, where one side is a group of humans shooting their way through hordes of zombies to reach a safe zone, while the opposing side is a group of zombies with unique powers that are hell-bent on stopping the humans from reaching said safe zone. In Dead by Daylight, you can either assume the role of a single killer or one of the 4 survivors. As a killer, your goal is to kill and hook every single survivor in the game. As a survivor,
I wonder if he's going to be survivor side or the
by
killer
completing all
side.
5 generators and escaping through the exit gates, or being the last survivor alive and escaping through the hatch. This asymmetry creates an interesting challenge. Whereas the survivors are incentivized to avoid the killer at all costs and just do generators, the killer is instead incentivized to find as many survivors as possible to prevent them from doing generators and eventually kill them. Now, it wouldn't be very fun if survivors would die as soon as they're found. So there are various mechanics that are included with the survivor kit that allows them to interact with the killer without immediately dying. Survivors can run away from the killer using pallets and windows to make as much distance as possible between them.
If
you are ever eventually caught, other survivors can unhook you, heal you, or even stun the killer from being put on the hook in the first place.
Assuming
if the last half of the survivor section sounded way more entertaining than do generators, congratulations, you just found the fatal flaw in Dead by Daylight's game design. As a quick reminder and recap for this section, killers win by killing 3 or more survivors. Survivors win by surviving. Survivors only win if they do generators and escape. And the most interesting and engaging part of the game for survivors is being chased by the killer. This is also usually the most engaging part of playing killer as well, using your unique power to outsmart the survivors and eventually catch them. So now, after we all understand how Dead by Daylight plays, let's look through its history of balance and see the creative ways the players have found to not play the game. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction.
I think the
Besides being something I've seen on Modern Warfare 2 loading screen, that quote is actually Newton's third law and pretty aptly describes how early Dead by Daylight was. In 2016, when the game first released, it was, without a doubt, the most broken version of Dead by Daylight. In this version, survivors had access to something that we can only call infinites. These were sections of the map that were so imbalanced, you could run a killer there infinitely. No matter how good a killer was, all a survivor had to do was run the route correctly, and the killer would have absolutely zero chance of ever catching them. Killers who didn't know and therefore would never break off chase would often get frustrated that they could never catch the survivors, meanwhile all the generators are being done around them. And so, if you think you're never going to be able to catch that survivor again once you finally got them on the hook, are you ever going to let them go? The answer for some killers is no. In 2016, there was no penalty for camping hooks in Dead by Daylight, so more often than not, you would have a trapper place a trap right underneath the hooked player and stare directly at them for the next few minutes, waiting until they finally died.
The look was way
any other survivor
more
could do, so getting caught often meant getting killed. And while nice survivors avoided the infinites and nice killers avoided face camping other survivors, if at the end of the day all you wanted to do was win, there was no penalty for using either of these mechanics.
Definitely used to have
Later
a really hardcore
as the game was still in quite a broken state,
completely.
Behavior would release a DLC for the game which added a new killer, the Nurse. If infinites and permanently looping killers was the action, the Nurse was the reaction. She has, ever since her release, always been one of the top 2 killers in the entire game. And 8 years later, after numerous nerfs, she's still number 1.
Starting, of course, with the queen of Dead by Daylight, the Nurse. So the Nurse has been the strongest killer in the game for a long time, and by the looks of it, it looks like she will continue to be number 1 for a very long time.
Her killer power allows her to blink through walls, ceilings, pallets, windows, ignoring just about every mechanic in the game that would allow survivors to escape. The perfect reaction to survivors that would run the killers around.
Seems logical to have that killer in the game, right?
If you thought infinites and camping hooks was the worst problem at this time, think again. Hatches in old Dead by Daylight couldn't be closed by killers. There also was no endgame collapse yet, which is essentially a timer that will automatically end the game and prevent standoffs like this. So what would end up happening is the killer would find the hatch and wait for the survivor there. If the survivor tried to do the animation to escape through the hatch, the killer could grab them and instantly throw them over their shoulders so that they could go hook them. However, if killers hit survivors, there's a small cooldown on their attack and the survivor's hitbox is disabled, meaning the survivor could run through the killer and escape through the hatch without the killer being able to do anything. Because of this, you would have famously long standoffs, some being hours long, where both the survivor and the killer refuse to do anything else with their life except win a game of Dead by Daylight.
Theoretically, there's nothing I can do at this point.
I love how he's just fucking eating pasta.
I'm just wasting our time while I eat. Oh, bottles, I know. All right, guys, I'll be back in a few. Oh, forgot the plate.
Oh, she was stream sniping.
Guess what, bitch? I got a controller for your ass.
Back in the wild, wild west of Dead by Daylight, the hatch wasn't just available to the lone survivor left. It would actually be revealed once enough generators were done. If 4 survivors were alive, you needed all 5 generators to be completed before it was revealed. If 3 survivors were alive, you needed 4.
Yeah, you used to be able to get
However, this merely revealed
3 people out of the hatch,
Actually,
right?
unlocking it required a key, an item that survivors can find around the map or bring with them at the beginning of the game, and upon interacting with the hatch, would open it. This
He
meant
just
survivors didn't have to
basically
wait
kind
to
of
open
showed
the
why they
exits to
removed
escape.
it.
They merely had to
It
wait
led
until
to a
they had enough
hatch
generators
standoff where
that
both
the
players
hatch
would
was
just
visible
stand
on
there
the
for
map,
all
use a key,
eternity
and
because
ensure everyone gets out
nobody,
safely.
it was
Before
basically
the
you had to
outcome
lose
kill,
on
one might think
purpose
would be
and
obvious
neither
to
person
this
wanted to
situation
lose,
is to make sure
so
that the survivors can't
they
get
would just
enough
stand there
generators done.
forever.
I like your critical thinking, but there's a reason why this is the worst balanced game ever. Along with keys, survivors could bring other items with them into the match, like medkits and toolboxes. Medkits would allow you to heal yourself and others faster, and toolboxes were obviously there for doing generators quicker. At this time, one of the add-ons for the toolbox, called Brand New Part, could be used to instantly complete a generator. There were no skill checks, there was no downside. You just clicked the button and the generator was done. And because every survivor could bring one if they so chose, you could have games where 4 generators were done in the first 5 seconds of a game. Or if you were going for a hatch escape,
imagine being a developer and being that bad at your job.
By hand, and then use
it really goes to show you that there was almost never any hope for this.
The key to get all 4 survivors safely out of the game.
The success of Dead by Daylight is literally so fucking like, they're so lucky. Like, they're honestly so lucky. I've never seen any company in my life get a freer ride than Behavior has had. Like, their decisions by default should have made them fail. And so many other asymmetrical games would have launched at the same time as Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight would have been seen as like the absolute worst game. The only thing it really has going for it that's just wholly unique is its chase. That's it. Like, if it wasn't for the chase in Dead by Daylight, the game would have nothing. I really do believe that. Like, the chase literally makes the game. But balance-wise, holy shit, this company never deserved to have success. Like, they just didn't. Because these decisions are like literally 2 + 2 = 4 level of difficult to make, and they still chose the wrong answers. It goes to show you how bad MMR is in Dead by Daylight, right? Because, like, imagine this version of Dead by Daylight with MMR. Like, how just unbelievably bad it would be, but somehow without MMR, this nostalgia version of Dead by Daylight feels better than modern Dead by Daylight with MMR in it.
Had their own tools that could end games quickly.
Actually, I can do this. You can see right here. There's a basket, and that's where he sits most of.
The Ebony Mori was an offering that killers could use that would allow them to kill any survivor that they downed. Without having to waste time of using the hook mechanic, you could quickly and cinematically shred your way through the survivors. And with certain killers like the Hillbilly with an insta-down mechanic, you could make the game 3v1 within 10 seconds. And unlike with hooking survivors, there was no counterplay to this, as there was no way to stop a Mori animation when it began. Because of the nature of the game and killers being able to see what survivors are holding while they're in the lobby, killers could tell whether or not someone was going to bring
you can't say that the characters weren't extremely powerful on both sides.
It was a lose-lose for both sides, because the old ranking system required you to get multiple points in several different categories, and if you dominated the game too hard by ending it early, you wouldn't meet the threshold for ranking up, creating an odd situation where a killer could kill all 4 survivors and D-rank, or all 4 survivors escape and D-rank.
That's because of the game back then. Again, the game wasn't about getting the 4K or escaping. It was about pipping. That was what everybody was trying to do. Everybody was trying to pip. So, like, it didn't matter. Like, yeah, you could have a Mori if you were pissed off. You could go in with a Mori. You could kill everybody out of rage. But then the game's going to tell you you lost. And if you, like, likewise, like if you went in with 4 brand new parts and you escaped in 2 seconds, the game would tell you that you lost the game because you didn't earn enough points. It's like a pleasure. You're like creating like a show for the entity, right? Is like kind of the idea of the pip system. So it didn't really ruin the game because you technically were still losing. But now you obviously would be winning if you just escaped and nothing else matters. It's really toxic. It's really shit, the MMR system.
In a game like Dead by Daylight, the only real victory is making sure the other side isn't having any fun. Generators and hooks are the only ways that either side can progress the game, and while killers were never able to destroy generators, survivors had access to a perk called Saboteur that allowed them to sabotage hooks, which at the time would permanently destroy them and not allow them to be used for the remainder of the match. Because survivors could wiggle and eventually break free of the killer's grasp if they aren't hooked quickly enough, making sure the killer has nowhere to hook a survivor once they've been downed ensures that the killer can never progress the game. Thankfully, there are 4 hooks on the map that were never able to be destroyed, not even in this
team's gonna get slugged to death.
Those were the basement hooks. The basement was an area that would usually spawn underneath a killer shack, and the only way in or out was a single staircase. Getting hooked down there as a survivor was an instant death sentence. Most survivors at the time wouldn't even go down to help you because they knew how hopeless the situation was. Because, more often than not, all of your hooks would be sabotaged, most killers would run a basement build. This was a combination of 2 perks at the time, Agitation and Iron Grasp, which made the killer faster when they carried survivors, and made it so that the wiggle percentage...
Do you see how, like, bad game design leads to bad gameplay? You know, like you put it in so people can't, like players will always find a way to win. They will. No matter what it is, if there is a possible way to win, the players will sniff it out. It's just odd to me that like players can do that almost instantly. Like they don't even have to put much thought into it. It's like obvious, inherent what you need to do. Like, oh, they're breaking my hooks, but if I could put them in the basement, then I can make it to where they can never get out because I could just face camp the basement, right? At this stage of the game. So like, that's just obvious. But like the devs don't, it's not ever obvious. Like it's never obvious to them, ever. They like literally are just staring blankly into a sea of data and numbers and have absolutely no idea what the like reality is of it. It's so odd.
Which was the mechanic that allowed survivors to break free of the killer's grasp, was reduced significantly, making it borderline impossible to ever escape from a killer. This pairing of perks allowed the killer to take you from wherever you were downed on the map all the way into the basement. And once you were there, you were not likely to get out. As the other 2 perks that a killer would run, Unrelenting and Save the Best for Last, would reduce the cooldown on their attacks so much that even if another survivor managed to get you off that hook, the killer could down both of you before you even reached the base of the stairs. Eventually, Dead by Daylight would release...
Wait. Did Unrelenting used to affect your recovery time even when you got hit? Don't forget the endless supply of glue to snow. There is an endless supply. They make sure of that. It did? Holy shit. So you guys know more about me because I started in 2017, so I missed like the peak gutter.
Their face. One of the strongest insta-down killers.
This guy knows more about old Dead by Daylight than I do. I'm guessing that's when he played it.
Basement Bubbas. But that's a discussion for a different time. The first licensed DLC for Dead by Daylight, the Halloween chapter, which brought Michael Myers and Laurie Strode, paved the way for future licensed DLCs, and as to be expected, broke the game even further. Haddonfield, the DLC added map, was so horribly imbalanced that most killers would DC at the site. There was even a house titled the House of Pain for how hard it was for killers to catch survivors.
It's still in the game.
At the time was that Haddonfield was
and
full
it's
of
even
windows,
stronger. The current House of Pain is even stronger for Survivor than this version was.
For those who don't know, killers move slowly through windows while survivors move faster. And while technically, if a survivor falls from a great height, they're supposed to be staggered for a couple seconds, slowing them and allowing the killer to catch up. There was a perk in the game called Balance Landing, which reduced the stagger effect from
Okay, I take that back. With Balance Landing, this version was stronger.
Falls by up to 75%. And after landing, you would sprint at 150% of your normal running speed, with a cooldown of only 40 seconds. And at the time, this wasn't an exhaustion perk, so you could use other things like Sprint Burst with this. If this sounds pretty horrible, it was. However, this might be the most balanced thing out of the entire DLC, because with this DLC, not only do we have Decisive Strike, but we have Object of Obsession. This perk, probably most out of everything I've mentioned so far, has left a scar on the community.
Can't believe the House of Pain in Badham still exists. It's really crazy.
And is one of the reasons why people hate.
Don't you just love how like the game creates a problem, right? Like they create a problem like tunneling. They know it exists. They know people don't like it or whatever. And instead of trying to like think of like, okay, how can we fix this? Instead of fixing it, they leave it in the game because they know it frustrates people. And then they sell you a solution to it with Decisive Strike. A lot of live service games do that. Grand Theft Auto is fucking notorious for selling people solutions. Like they'll bring out something super overpowered, and then the next DLC will bring out something in the game that can counter the last thing that they released. They just create problems and then sell them, like sell solutions to you. Behavior does the same exact thing. Just loves to do that.
Survive with friends with so much passion. Object of Obsession was a perk that made you the obsession of the killer. Looking at them outside of their terror radius revealed your aura to each other, which essentially just meant you could see each other through walls. In a vacuum, this sounds like not the greatest perk. The killer can see you wherever you go, making it almost impossible to escape from them? Why would you want that? Well, with a little tool we call Discord, and something most people haven't heard of, Friends, you could not only track everything that the killer was doing, but relay every single movement. This made killers like Wraith, whose only power was going invisible, utterly useless, and killers like Trapper, that relied on strategically placing traps across the map that hopefully survivors would stand on, also useless. While this perk was released in 2016, it wouldn't get nerfed until 2021, making stealth killers released during this time, like Ghostface, almost unplayable. Other notable additions like Decisive Strike, which, unlike how the perk is used now, as an anti-tunnel measure, used to allow you to stun the killer as soon as you were picked up for the first time. And because every single survivor could run it created what we now call the slug meta, where killers, knowing that everyone had Decisive Strike, would refuse to pick up survivors and just let them bleed out on the ground for 4 minutes. What an exciting time for Dead by Daylight that was. Killers also got their
we're in that time right now.
This was also the introduction of Save the Best for Last, Play with Your Food, and Dying Light. All perks that would end up becoming staples of a lot of good killer builds until they were inevitably nerfed. And Michael, the newest killer to the Dead by Daylight killer roster, came with an add-on combo that was potentially stronger than even Mori's. His iridescent add-on, Judith's Tombstone, allowed you to insta-kill every single survivor.
Alright, well, he's not well-versed enough to know that Tombstone is better than the Eerie was, I should say. They're both dead now.
That you caught, even if they were at full health, and by comboing that with another add-on, you could have permanent tier 3 on Michael Myers, meaning that for the rest of the game, as long as you could get to tier 3 once, you would be able to insta-kill every survivor, although you would have to find the survivor first.
Moonlight offerings
and fog offerings were offerings that could change the way that the game looked. Certain moonlight offerings would allow you to dim the light of the map, and fog...
True Star, much appreciated for growing some muttons.
The True Star grew some muttons.
Now, think of it this way. Imagine they got rid of like the moonlight offering and the fog. Well, no, they could keep fog actually, but they got rid of the moonlight offering. But like, imagine if they put in like weather offerings. How cool that would have been. Like put snow or rain or some kind of like weather effect on the map. That would have been pretty sick.
Fog offerings would allow you to increase the amount of fog on the map. Comboed together, you could have a map that is so dark that most killers can't see you, even if you're walking around right in front of them. This was made worse by Iron Will, which, when injured, would prevent you from making any noises, and the infamous P3 Claudette, which in layman terms was Prestige 3 Claudette, a character with a bloody cosmetic that allowed them to blend in with the environment, which rendered them borderline invisible. Funnily enough, Claudettes were hated on just about every side of the aisle, because every survivor that played with another Claudette would notice them crouching in the corner of the map.
Claudette doing? I don't know, probably hiding in a bush.
Claudette, can you do a fucking gen?
I don't know what to do. I've been literally getting chased for 20 minutes. Can she run?
You really shouldn't count this as...
Look at her! Run!
Just came back after
That was such a notorious match DVD. Imagine going down in history as being like one of the biggest cowards who's ever played.
Don't count. Claudette.
Getting generators. You.
And every killer was trying to figure out how to adjust their brightness to 400% so that they could actually see the goddamn game. I'm sure we were close to getting the Seeing Eye Dog DLC, but Behavior wasn't able to secure the license for
The last part.
So far, I haven't talked too much about Survive with Friends, even though they're a core reason of why Dead by Daylight is one of the most imbalanced games ever. Survive with Friends isn't anything complicated, all it is playing Survivor with your friends. In most games, this isn't really a problem. However, Dead by Daylight was obviously not made to give so much information to survivors. Not only is there no voice chat when you get into the game, there's no text chat, and the only form of communication that you can have with your other survivors in the game is by teabagging, pointing at them, or waving at them to come. Without perks, you shouldn't even be able to tell the location of other survivors in the game, and back then there was no way for you to know whether or not someone else was doing a generator, getting chased by a killer, or hiding in a locker for 60 seconds. Look at this dumbass killer, bro.
Like, I think the animations are better now. I'm not like somebody who defends the old animations, but
yet if you play
the
with your friends in
overall look of the
Discord,
game
all this
has
information and
really been like
as I already went over, object
cleaned
of
up
obsession
too
made the
much.
game
It
even
doesn't look
worse, and it would
gritty or
showcase that anytime you would run
like how
Survive with friends, you would have
to, and I think it's only going to get less gritty over
It was
time
kind of like playing Among Us,
as they
but you
Fortnite
didn't
it
mute
more
at
and
the
more.
beginning.
Let's go. Felix, you're not muted. Killing time. Oh,
In general, there was really nothing wrong with Survive with Friends. Again, it was just you playing with your friends against someone running Object of Obsession and bringing multiple flashlights so you can never pick up a survivor without being stunned. Made the game awful to play for anyone who wasn't willing to play the most meta killer with the most meta perks, or for anyone new at the game. Flashlights were the items of choice for survivors during this time because they could do something called instant blind, where you'd point a flashlight at a killer and it would blind them before they could even look away. It was bad enough that even during mid-chase, you could be blinded by the survivor you're running after. This spawned numerous memes, including some where the trapper was in a corner being constantly clicked and flashlighted at by a group of 4 survivors. But you know what they say about those who fly too close to the sun. During a Korean Twitch event in 2017, Matthew Coate, the game director for Dead by Daylight, had the opportunity to
Korean
talk about
match.
Dead by Daylight with a panel of other hosts. One of the panelists mentioned that as survivors get better at the game becomes more survivor-sided. Here's what Matthew says.
Yeah, so when you're at the low levels, killers have a bit of an advantage, and when you get to the high levels, the survivors have a bit of an advantage, but it's a very, very small margin, and something that we're looking at and constantly trying to calibrate, and it's gonna change with the way we're rating the performance.
Bro.
Something that's coming very soon.
Later, Matthew was even challenged by one of the hosts on the panel, saying that the game would be more balanced if he was a better player, and eventually coaxing him into playing killer in front of everybody.
Oh my god. Poor Matthew.
Talking about like
How embarrassing.
good of a player that you would be, or how bad you would be. Yeah, and since you're the developer, and he was saying, it looks like you'll be pretty good since you're the developer, but was saying that if you were a very skillful
Korean people, like, they care a lot about skill in video games. It's a huge thing there. Man, look at him. He when he asked him if he was good, he like did like a little wave motion with his hand, by the way. Like, I'm okay. And they goaded him in, man. Like it's like you're watching a man be assassinated on live TV.
That's what he said. If you don't mind, would you like playing, a game as a killer right now? Sure, I can do that.
Keep in mind that this game was a public match. This was just a random group of survivors they found when they queued up in Korea. And this was one of the most
a random match. I didn't know that.
The game director of Dead by Daylight was getting teabagged at every pallet, flashlighted mid-chase, insta-blinded every time they would go to hit a pallet, only had 2 hits on survivors the entire game, one of which was completely countered by adrenaline, and at the end of the game, in the post-game chat of a game that only lasted 5 minutes, the survivors typed, "Noob killer."
Noob killer.
Noob killer.
Sealing the flashlight's fate forever.
You felt how, the killers feel when, a team of 3, a team of 4 go up against you with flashlights and they just play around with you. So
bro, this host is amazing. He's giving he's fucking giving him the shit.
Felt what the pain was as being alone in the woods as a killer by yourself.
The flashlights are extremely powerful, and it's very frustrating when you get an organized group playing against you like this. These are tweaks that are gonna happen. But
these are tweaks that are gonna happen. Flashlight OP sign.
But some combinations are gonna be much more powerful.
Roughly 1 month later, flashlights were nerfed, and the insta-blind mechanic no longer exists.
Hey, though, if you're not having fun on the game, why don't you just go take a break from it, huh? Can you guys? The DVD community is so guilty of bringing all of the pain on themselves because they're so fucking retroactive with their decision making. Do you know how many content creators in the Dead by Daylight community glazed all of the ideas this year that Behavior was planning on doing when it was so obvious they were all going to just be a complete disaster, but they sat there and fucking glazed the ideas like they were going to be amazing and make the game so much better. And then they all of these changes that we knew here, at least, were going to be absolute dog shit, come to the game. And then all of a sudden, all of these creators that were like, oh, they're going to be such good changes, do a 180 and immediately go, this is the worst state. All of them made videos, multiple. This is the worst day Dead by Daylight's ever been in. The devs don't know what they're doing. Can you just imagine if the DVD community was just a little bit proactive instead of just completely 100% retroactive every single time and then wonder why we get in these situations? It's so obvious that this is going to be dog shit, and yet they still have to glaze. And it's because DVD content creators, and I don't know, maybe other content creators and other games are like this too, but I don't know about it. I haven't seen it really. DVD content creators are so political, man. They're the most political group of people I've ever seen in my life. They literally are like politicians. They choose every word so carefully. Their main goal is staying on a good status with Behavior, but also a good status with the kind of the majority of the DVD community, which means they can't really have any unique takes on anything. They kind of just have to go with the majority, just that majority, we're all thinking this, right? So I'm just gonna say it. It just, if the DVD community had a pair of nuts, a little bit of balls, we could have gotten so much more done with the game. But after 10 years, we're still in such a gutter spot just because nobody is willing to just speak freely. I mean, very few people anyway. It's not about being good at your own game. Most devs aren't. It's about seeing in real time what's going on and seeing tweaks needed in real time. Yeah, and you have to go one of two routes. If you don't have the ability to balance your game effectively because you're not that good at it, then you need to not have an ego, and you need to listen to the people that are the best players in your game, I think, and then kind of work with that as much as you can. Because you're never gonna get good information for people who don't really truly understand the game. That's how all humans work in groups. Yeah, you're right. It is. It's just I don't know why it might be because it's an asymmetrical game, I would imagine. But I don't think you would so much see this in a game like Rainbow Six Siege or something, where you kind of have to have this community brain, or it's you're dumb and you're weird. Like, you couldn't even, do you know how many years in this game you couldn't tell people that stretch res gave you an advantage when it quite literally broke the game in an insane fundamental way? But if you said that, you were like ostracized, like they wanted you out, you know, like this guy thinks that stretch res gives you an advantage. Like, it's the same thing that they love to do all the time, even with like stuff that's in the game, like windows of opportunity is a great example that people will tell you, like, windows of opportunity doesn't give you any advantage. It just fucking shows you where like they try to gaslight you, or they're stupid. I don't get it, but it's just really annoying that the DBD community is so retroactive with everything they do. Like, I can't take any other video seriously when I see it. When I like the video comes out, it's like Dead by Daylight's in the worst state it's ever been. I'm like, then maybe you should have fucking said that these ideas sucked like 8 months ago. But like retroactively, they'll be like, we all knew that these updates weren't going to be good. Like, did we? Not that I saw. I'm pretty sure you actually said that these updates were going to be great. I'm pretty sure I could go on Twitter and in like 5 minutes, I could find like multiple tweets where you talked about how great the changes were going to be. Like, what are you just lying for? You're just like, you're literally just lying. Like a real true politician. It's crazy. I'll never understand it, and I never want to be a part of it.
Existed. That game was like putting Oppenheimer in the fresh fallout of a nuclear bomb. Karmic retribution at its finest. I really do think we could solve all balance issues by forcing every Dead by Daylight dev to have to play against Survive with Friend stacks every single day. Now, the flashlight nerf wasn't the end. Even today, using a flashlight as a survivor feels like you're chasing the killer instead of the other way around. But at least now, insta-blinds are no longer. Over time, admittedly, Dead by Daylight got more and more balanced. Sadly, balance didn't really mean more fun. Gen rushing, while not as strong as it used to be in the era of the old brand new parts where you could simply click a button and instantly complete a generator, was becoming more and more of an issue as the average skill of the player base was increasing. Not only were survivors able to hit better skill checks, but they were also getting more confident in dealing with a killer. Anyone who's played Dead by Daylight enough might know this feeling. Being utterly frightened at the beginning, hiding in corners, hiding in tall grass, and trying your best to avoid the killer while you get the gens done, before finally growing some balls after enough hours, and being confident enough to stick on a generator even if you hear that heartbeat. This not only meant the killers would have to deal with survivors that could loot them more easily, but they also had to apply more pressure than they ever have. And back in the day, there wasn't really much of an answer other than NOED and Ruin. NOED, also called No One Escapes Death, is the original second chance perk. Once the exit gates were opened, killers with this perk would increase their movement speed by 5% and have their missed attack cooldown decreased by 8%, which could stack with other perks that do the same thing. Not only that, but every hit on a survivor would instantly down them. In its original incarnation, this was simply a perk.
I mean, NOED didn't get changed too much.
No cooldown.
It's still really good.
Perk and frustrated the hell out of survivors. While this perk was meant to give killers like Trapper and Wraith, weaker killers that can be abused, a way back into the game to score a couple kills, there was nothing preventing nurses from running this perk as well. The only counterplay to a nurse with NOED was literally walking out of the map as soon as you saw it. You could be the best survivor in the world, but there's no way you're dodging a nurse with 7 moves and 1 hit down. Later,
it doesn't work anymore.
It would get nerfed to only last for 120 seconds, 2 minutes, after the exit gates have been opened. A good change, but still, 2 minutes is plenty of time for a killer to take care of any stray.
I didn't even know about that NOED nerf.
Stragglers. When the hag was introduced and we finally got our first taste of hexes, perks that were tied to totems that would randomly spawn on the map and once cleansed would remove the effect for the remainder of the game. This allowed for some counterplay to NOED, because if survivors did the optional side objective of cleansing all the totems on the map, NOED would never activate, potentially solving 2 problems at once, one being the killer's complaint that gens were being done too quickly.
Yeah, you don't have
and
time really to do totems anymore unless they're literally hexes.
An interesting and welcome way to balance parts of the game. However, as I said in the beginning, balance isn't always fun. There was another perk that was very popular at the time. Almost every killer would run it. It was called Hex Ruin. I assume it was short
OG
for
Hex Ruin,
in
guys.
the game because
Wasn't
that's
it
certainly
delicious?
what this perk did at the time. This, along with some other perks, was one of the reasons that I could no longer get my friends to get into Dead by Daylight. How Hex Ruin worked was, every time a survivor would hit a good skill check, meaning just a regular skill check that provided no bonus, they would instead regress the generator by 5%. Great skill checks, which are hard to hit for new players, would grant 0% bonus progression on the generator. In other words, if you weren't hitting an incredibly hard quick time event, you would actually reverse the progress on a generator. And if there were multiple survivors on a generator all missing the skill checks, you wouldn't be able
this
to
is
make
like
any
one of the
progress.
most balanced
Killers weren't nice about this
ways
either.
to play
They
the
would run
game.
perk combos like Huntress's Lullaby that would remove the audio warning for a skill check coming up, or killers would play someone like the Doctor, which could make your skill check spawn at random spots on your screen. The counter to Ruin was finding it and cleansing it, therefore rendering it inactive and making the killer play with only 3 perks for the remainder of the game. There were a few problems with this during the time. For one, totems would spawn in a completely random spot on the map, and sometimes could even spawn directly in front of a survivor. Another problem was, certain killers like the Trapper and the Hag could place traps where their Ruin is and defend it the entire game. Thirdly, if you're a new survivor, you're gonna have no idea what's happening and why the generator just won't make any progress. It was also even more frustrating for experienced players who knew what was happening and would have a new
Second chance perks. Question, Choi. How do you think the community would react if a killer could pop a completed gen? They would lose their minds and say it's the most overpowered thing that's ever existed in the game, even though Shoulder the Burden is essentially the same exact thing. Like, Shoulder the Burden is like the same exact thing. Why I lost my mind when that perk came out. It's the most unfair thing I've ever seen them add to Dead by Daylight on the Survivor side, I think. There were things that it just made certain killers literally unplayable, though. Like, when they, like, the original made for this made, like, every M1 killer literally unplayable. Like, you could not win a match with OG made for this unless you were an S tier. So, like, that's, I guess, more, like, egregious. But Shoulder the Burden is just so blatantly unfair. I'm checking the Steam player charts for DVD, and then I saw your stream title. They literally already lost all the players of the game from FNAF. Good job, behavior. Is that so? Let's take a quick look at it. So they got up to 120,000 players, and now they're peaking at around 49,000 a day. So yeah, they're on schedule. We'll see. They're on schedule to be maybe back down to around the 30,000 mark by March. But then we'll see if the Stranger Things chapter might bump it back up again, because that's what behavior does to stay like relevant, right? It's not the game, like the game design clearly. It's surviving and leeching off of licensed content. That's how you got to get it done.
Player come to their generator, miss a skill check, and get rid of all of the progress they just made on this generator. I'll never forget when my friend asked whether Ruin was a built-in mechanic, because every single killer that we played against, even at the lowest rank possible, was running Ruin. It was extremely weak at the higher levels, as unless you were someone like the Hag that could defend all of your hexes, most coordinated survivors could figure out that Ruin...
It wasn't that weak, though. See, what you could do with... What I loved about this OG Hex Ruin so much is that it didn't regress the gens, right? I mean, it did in a way, because it, like, when you hit the skill check, it regressed it. But it realistically, you more or less were just doing gens slower. It didn't actually literally, like, the gen didn't regress if you weren't on it like it does now. So as a killer, you knew how sweaty your matches were going to be, because as long as Ruin was alive, you could go for chases and you didn't have to worry about the gens getting rushed. But when Ruin got destroyed, that's when you knew you had to lock in and start playing way more aggressive and tactical. So it allowed like the pacing of the game to breathe, and it gave survivors like a good side objective. Like, I don't know, I just think it was better. And you also had 3 perks for each killer that you could run that weren't gen defense, right? Because like Ruin was like the only gen defense perk. So you could be like, oh, let's run this build and this build and this build. Like, this synergy sounds fun. This synergy sounds fun. Now it's a literally like you have to be getting 10,000% value out of every perk you have in desperation. That's like modern DBD. And you have to sweat and play strategic literally from the get-go, because you know the gens are not going to last.
Ruin is in the game and go find it and cleanse it, therefore rendering it useless against any high tier survivor, but making it absolutely horrible for new players. Somewhere around the time where Ruin was at its most AIDS, the survivor's perks were beginning to become quite predictable as well. There was a certain build that every survivor would run that would take care of just about every single need they had. Adrenaline, Dead Hard, Borrowed Time, Decisive Strike, and Unbreakable were almost all but guaranteed to be on just about every survivor. Decisive Strike and Unbreakable were usually used interchangeably, as the killer had no way of knowing which one you had. On one hand, if they pick you up and you have Decisive Strike, they get stunned. On the other hand,
still an old DVD right now, by the way.
Just get back up. Killers
he's showing modern footage, but he's talking about old DVD.
Once you began to face against experienced players in Dead by Daylight, all of the builds started to look the same. Most survivors would know what most killers were running, and most killers would know what most survivors were running. In a way, it was kind of like mutually assured destruction, where if one side decided to not bring a meta perk, they would get bullied for the rest of the game. Better to bring Moris and Noed than getting teabag and flashlight spammed by a bunch of survivors running Adrenaline and Dead Hard. And once again, killer balance was rearing its ugly head. We were approaching what some would call the worst time in Dead by Daylight history. The first killer, the Spirit, quickly became one of the best killers in the game, almost usurping Nurse. Her entire kit was built around fucking with survivors' heads and causing issues for even the most experienced survivors. She had a phasing mechanic, which would intermittently cause her to disappear for barely a second.
I'm curious about your guys' opinions on Spirit. Like, for me, I noticed a lot of similarities when Spirit released in comparison to how the Krasu was received, right? Like, Spirit came out, everybody was trying to say that she's stronger than Nurse, she's better than Nurse, she's the best killer in the game, there's no counterplay, she's brain dead. But, like, was it true? I don't remember really playing a lot of Survivor around that time, so, like, I don't remember how base Spirit was. I know people got really upset at her fake thing where, like, basically if she was next to you and she went into her phase, you had no idea if she was phasing or not, so it put you in like a lose-lose situation kind of thing. But like then like the pro players came out and they showed you how you could kind of still make good guesses and still waste her time enough to where you could dumpster her. So it's always that weird thing where it's like no matter how strong a killer is, Survivor's always actually still stronger in the end. But yeah, I just noticed that similarity. Krasu, like, everyone saying like, oh, she's better than Nurse now and stuff. It really reminded me of when Spirit came out.
But long enough to mind
like
game
how much of it was just
passive and had nothing
like a
to do with how
story,
good the Spirit was, and it would often gift you hits on survivors. Her vault animation that allowed her to go through windows also didn't play an animation at all. Instead of playing an actual animation, she would just teleport through it after about a second. Survivors had no way of knowing whether or not she was just mind gaming. Her main ability allowed her to leave a husk behind and travel through the ethereal plane. What this meant was she had a highly increased movement speed. She could no longer see survivors, but she could still hear them and see their scratch marks. And once she releases the power button, she could teleport to wherever she phase walked to. If a survivor was watching her phase walk, all they would see is the husk left behind, which only looks like the Spirit is standing still. She was a character perfect for the time, and came with an add-on that silenced her phase walk queue, meaning survivors had no way of knowing whether or not she was phase walking, allowing her to grab them off of generators and instantly hook them. She was, and still is, one of the more oppressive killers in Dead by Daylight. However, her reign of terror
you don't see spirits anymore at all. She's like Krasu. Like she pretty much doesn't exist.
The worst DLC,
especially with how bad the audio is.
Among Us. Sus. The Darkness Among Us DLC added Legion, a
the
new
first
killer,
school,
and Ormond, a new map. On release, Legion was the most broken killer in all of the game.
Can't wait.
Legion on release. Oh, I'm so salty about this.
Arguably the worst time in DVD history, right? Like,
really?
It's got to be discussed as like the worst period of time in the game's meta.
And Ormond was the absolute
because he just
play if you were killer,
could keep you mending forever, right? Like nothing ever got done. He just literally mended you for all eternity.
This would be some kind of deceptive killer. And Among Us before
Forever Legion.
When the Legion released, and it was
like a bug though. It like stacked his mending.
And your main power was being really fast and smacking the shit out of survivors. Everyone was a little bit more than disappointed. Essentially, how this killer would play was you'd activate your power to get a speed boost, allow you to jump through windows and vault over pallets faster, and every time you would hit a survivor, you would inflict deep wounds on them, extend the amount of time that you could stay in your power, and have every other survivor on the map revealed to you.
No, like you literally would have to like get up to the point where it would take you like 5 minutes to mend like a single time.
Way of downing survivors by itself.
Monto had like a really infamous video on it where they had like an hour-long match, and like I think they still ended up beating the Legion, even though they had to like mend for like 5 minutes every time they got hit.
You and wait for the timer to run out. Players quickly found out that all you had to do was inflict deep wound and look at the ground, and it would count as ending the chase. So Legion players would hit you with Deep Wound and then look at the ground like the shy little guys they are, following you everywhere you go and waiting for you to inevitably drop from a Deep Wound.
Let's just go break this so I can get out of
the old Deep Wound. Looks better, doesn't
blood
it?
Marks. Hi. That's the most toxic thing you can ever do on Legion. Just down them. They can't do anything because they're not in a chase, so they can't keep running. Bullshit.
There were also other fun combos thrown with the Legion, like Stab Wound Study and Frank's Mixtape, that allowed you to ignore the main mechanic of Legion, which is hit one survivor, go for the next survivor, and quickly injure all of the survivors on the map. And instead, you would just chase one survivor, hit them again, and their Deep Wound timer would go down to 0.
And then we got Frank's Mixtape.
There were a lot of really bad variations of Legion at the start. They kept remaking him over and over and over again to try to get his power right. So this is the one where you just hit him over and over again until they went down. Ironically, this probably still wouldn't be strong enough
there wasn't really much you could do. The Legion was built around being able to vault windows quickly, vault pallets quickly.
The cooldown time of the power would probably still
not only was this exceptionally boring for survivors.
Yeah, I have a funny story too. I'm not going to name names here, but prominent DBD survivor main literally banned me from their channel for a period of time because I ran Frank's Mixtape.
It was going to be.
It turns out that he just went on a thing where he banned everybody that used Frank's Mixtape.
Whatever survivor you chose to bully that game,
that was angry bug for sure.
Behavior quickly remedied this by nerfing the Legion, removing any way for him to get quick downs, and once every survivor was injured, you had to play him like a regular M1 killer without any power. Since then, Legion's always been quite a weak killer, and most survivors that play against him don't really have to heal up ever, as there really is no downside to being injured.
There's just no reason to heal against Legion.
Stronger when you're injured, which, speaking of healing,
that's important.
Healing in Dead by Daylight has almost never been balanced. A prime example of this is the syringe add-on for the medkit. Nowadays, when you use the syringe, you'll heal after 16 seconds. You might have heard other people call this an instant heal, which is a side effect from back in the day when this item did in fact instantly heal you. So during a chase, all you'd have to do is drop a pallet and then instantly heal with a medkit, something that would usually take 16 seconds that you could immediately apply, and doing so during chase. Now that's pretty strong. However, that's probably the most balanced thing out of everything I'm going to list here. In classic Dead by Daylight fashion, they released a DLC called The Hour of the Witch, bringing a new survivor, Michaela Reed, and introducing boons, which are essentially just hex totems for survivors. Although there's never really a downside to having a boon, as even though killers can snuff them out, a survivor that has the boon can just keep reapplying them, as long as there are totems left to use. So ironically, the only people that can really get rid of boon totems forever are the survivors themselves. Now Michaela's boon totem is Circle of Healing. On release, and for a while after, this boon was one of the most popular perks to run as a survivor, as any survivor within a 24-meter radius of this boon, which every survivor could see the aura of, gave you 100% bonus to healing speeds and self-care. Self-care is a Claudette ability that allows you to heal yourself without another survivor doing it for you. The downside being that you would do it at a reduced speed. In other words, if just one person...
This guy's not really even like going after, like he's not making it personal. He's just literally, like this video has already been on for 30 minutes. And we're not even into like 2018 yet. That's how badly like the you have to imagine it quite literally is the worst balanced game of all time, because we're 30 minutes into the video and this guy has not even gotten low on content of what to shit talk going into like 2000 and is this 2019 maybe by now? I don't know. But like we haven't even reached MMR, which I think was 2021. So we have years and years. We're like we didn't get to the halfway point. This is insane.
Person brought boon Circle of Healing and placed the boon on the map. That gave every survivor...
Wait, no. I think actually now with Michaela with the boon totems, we are in MMR now, right? We just got there. I take that back.
The game an extra perk, on top of the fact that you're already going to be healing quicker. Keep in mind that if a killer brought Ruin into the game and a survivor cleansed that totem, that perk is now disabled for the rest of the game. It took behavior over
He did quite a big jump there, though. He went from talking about like self-care to
in Dead by Daylight history. I wish I could say that was the most broken time for healing, but there is in fact one other time that puts even this one to shame: the God mode healing era. Back in the day, healing used to be a lot faster in Dead by Daylight. Not only that, but you could bring medkits and a perk like Botany Knowledge to increase your heal speeds even further. Survivors back in the day could self-care themselves faster then than they can heal others now. But with the perk Will Make It, not only could they heal themselves at blazingly fast speeds, they could heal themselves quicker than a killer could swing, giving survivors God mode for as long as the perk was active, which at the time was up to 2 minutes. This meant that you could essentially block a hook forever, and with some smart teamwork, you might be able to trap a killer in the corner. In classic Dead by Daylight fashion, the hillbilly
I never even saw this. This is absolute bullshit.
Down survivors. But for people who played Trapper and Wraith, the two weaker killers, there was absolutely no counterplay. The most hysterical thing about it was all it took was all 3 healing perks at the time, and you could have God mode. But that was all in the past. Surely, self-care will never be broken to the point where it could be abused against other killers as well, right? Freddy Krueger, another horror icon, has had an interesting balanced history in Dead by Daylight, going from the weakest killer in Dead by Daylight history.
All right, man, you had your moment in the spotlight. I cannot make you sound good. Freddy is just that kid in school everyone bullied. Anyways, that was my tier list.
To one of the strongest.
Next up, we're gonna go for Freddy. Now, some people will question the fact that Freddy is this low.
To one of the weakest again.
The worst killer in the game, arguably, right now.
Okay, something important to point out there. What changed with Freddy that he went from A tier down to C tier after his update? What changed about him that made him go from A tier down to C tier, right? Because I'm fairly certain he was almost entirely the same during that period of time. Am I wrong? Like, what happened? Did he just get power crept that hard that he dropped to C tier? Because they reworked him, right? So they made it to where you could put on, he got the snares, or you could use an add-on to get the pallets. He could teleport to gens. Was there, like, did he literally just drop from A tier to C tier simply because of MMR? No. They got rid of Forever Freddy. That's what it was. Fucking Forever Freddy. So he used to have his swing chains add-on, and like Thana, he could just slow gens down so much that you basically could never get them done. Well, was that true? Not really. They were just really fucking slow. Like, I still think you could have got them done, but that is why he was an A tier. The reason that that didn't jump out at me right away is because I never really used the Forever Freddy build. I thought he had like way more interesting and fun add-ons that I would use at the time. But yeah, like the more like tryhard sweaty players were definitely using Forever Freddy to just slow the game down massively while they would like tunnel and shit. I remember that now. Okay, it makes sense that he would drop from A tier to C tier simply just because of gen slowdown, though. That's kind of wild.
Is Freddy.
I'll let Matthew, my goat, explain what Freddy's original power was.
Freddy's power is called Dream Demon.
Side note, I know I'm talking a lot. I really liked when Matthew Cote did the narration for the new killers. It was just something really cool about it with like the trailers, and he did like a really good job. It felt so distinctively Dead by Daylight when he would do it. I miss it.
Freddy is invisible to non-sleepers, although he can be heard by paying close attention to the lullaby. When close enough to a normal survivor, Freddy can activate his power to tag him with sleepiness. Once a survivor is tagged with sleepiness, the killer suffers from a minor speed penalty and the survivor is gradually going to fall asleep. During that time, the survivor's aura is no longer shown to Freddy. This is his chance of hiding or trying to wake up. After a short delay, the survivor falls asleep. He's now...
The add-on worked if you were asleep. So like when you would fall asleep, your gen speed would go down like aggressively.
In the dream world, he can now see the killer and be hurt by him.
In short, any survivors that weren't already asleep could not see or hear Freddy. Freddy, on the other hand, could not interact with a survivor that was awake. Freddy's only power at this time was putting survivors to sleep. And to achieve this, Freddy had to target survivors and wait 7 seconds before they would be put asleep. Once they were finally asleep, Freddy could hit them, see their aura once they're out of his terror radius.
This was apparently the worst version of Freddy, but I never played it myself.
Penalty, which
I didn't want to buy him because everybody told me it was so bad.
Sabotaging, cleansing totems, all of that was reduced by 50%. survivors could do 3 things to wake themselves up: find another survivor to wake them up, get hooked, or fail a skill check. That last part is the reason that Freddy was the worst killer in the game. During this time, survivors who knew how Freddy's killer power worked would run self-care and intentionally miss the skill checks to be knocked out of the dream world. Once they did that, Freddy could no longer do anything to them. Awake survivors were completely immune to anything that Freddy would do. They could unhook in front of him, vault in front of him, do anything they wanted. As long as they weren't in the dream world, he was absolutely powerless. But did Freddy receive a rework? Did he receive a buff that would allow him to counterplay survivors? No, in the first patch after his release, Freddy only received nerfs. The reason for this being, Freddy was an absolute menace to anyone who did not know how his power worked. Not only could he see you from across the map, but all of your action speeds were 50% slower, meaning that new players who already had a problem doing generators were getting absolutely obliterated by Freddy players. And so, Freddy remained in this limbo for another 2 years before he would finally get a rework, rejuvenating him and making him one of the strongest killers in Dead by Daylight. He functions almost exactly the same as he does now, but previously he had a lot of add-ons that would slow down the game, and paired with other perks.
Okay, so swing chains and jump rope. So you would have a 21% slowdown on gens, which is like full Thanatophobia while you're asleep, or while, you know. So it wasn't always that horrible, but like worst case scenario, it was like 21%. Then people would stack Thana on top of it, which I don't know at the time how high Thana went up to. So, but I'm assuming it would be somewhere around 40% slower gens, right? So then you would use that with something like Pop Goes the Weasel and like maybe like, no. I'm guessing you would run it with Tinkerer because Tinkerer would have infinite uses. So every time a gen would get close to being done, you would teleport to the gen, and then you would either have Pop or Ruin or something as like regression. So that was like the Forever Freddy build. You basically just kept cycling gens and never letting them get finished over and over and over again. And clearly that's annoying. And in this clip, like imagine, I don't think it was ever existed with Eruption. If it had, that would have probably been the most broken thing in the game. But yeah, that was the issue.
Gave him the moniker Forever Freddy, due to how long Freddy games could really get. However, there's been multiple nerfs since then, and now Sharphand Joe isn't quite what he used to be. It has come to my attention that you haven't subscribed yet, and as a result, we've decided to nerf Pig. The Pig is one of the funniest sagas in all of Dead by Daylight history. Nowadays, she lives in the infamous meme, Nerf Pig, but there's an explanation of why it seems that Dead by Daylight can't stop nerfing the Pig. Much like it is nowadays, in 2018, when the Pig first released, killers were complaining about how fast gens would progress, often losing 1 or 2 in the first chase. So to mitigate this, Behavior did what they would always do, and release a DLC that would address these problems.
Sell you a solution, guys, just like I was talking about.
Traps on survivors' heads. Once down, the Pig could put a reverse bear trap on a survivor's head, and the next time a generator was completed, that trap would activate.
Design
survivors
idea,
would then have to go and search through several
really
jigsaw
cool
boxes scattered across the map.
Such a shame.
Remove the reverse bear trap from their heads. If they failed to or tried to exit through the gates, the reverse bear trap would activate and kill them. At the time, she was the only killer with built-in slowdown, and because of the RNG nature of jigsaw boxes, sometimes being able to remove the reverse bear trap after the first jigsaw box, and sometimes having to go through 5, she was an absolute menace to new survivors. And initially, upon release, she could block the final jigsaw box so that nobody could get the key, and therefore they'd die. All of this makes it sound like the Pig was actually a very strong killer, and technically she was.
Fault that
Much like Freddy, the Pig has always been very good at killing newer survivors, skewing her kill rate, the statistics the devs use to balance the game, much higher than it really should be, which has, over the years, led to non-stop nerfs. First, they increased her terror radius, which is quite debilitating for a stealth killer. Later that year, they nerfed her reverse bear traps so that they no longer activated when the endgame collapse began, and therefore made the Pig bad enough that gen rushing, the thing that she was...
I actually didn't know that her traps used to activate during when the endgame collapse started. That's a weird thing to get rid of, honestly. Like, you should really be rewarded for that, because like, think about it. Here's where let's get back into player agency again here, right? Because like, as the Pig player, if you wanted to like try to like save your head traps for the end part of the game so that like everyone had a head trap on their head towards the end, that could be like a way you could win the game in like a different style. But you have the agency to make that decision if you want to save your traps for later in the game or use them earlier in the game, right? So behavior says, no, people don't like that. We're going to step in and make the decision for you, right? Like that's the thing I hate the most about behavior. Just they just can't let people just fucking play the game. They have to just constantly oil it down into boringness. Rewarding players for smart play. What game are you playing, Joey? No comment. It's just get out of the bedroom. Let us do our thing. God damn it.
Designed to stop actually countered her. If you couldn't down all 4 survivors and put a trap on their head before they completed all 5 generators, half your power would be disabled until the game ends. But that's not all. Once again, later that year, they would nerf the other part of the pig's power, her ambush attack, and make it no longer count as a basic attack. This meant things like save the best for last, sloppy butcher, and exposure attacks. Since these many nerfs, the pig received add-on reworks, which were essentially nerfs to many of her popular add-ons, and some changes to the general RNG of the jigsaw boxes. Most of these changes came as a surprise to the community, as she never really was a top killer. Both her and Freddy are perfect examples of why this game will never be balanced. No matter how bad a killer actually might be, if their average kill rate is a little bit too high, nerf them until all you see is blight and nurses. Today, Dead by Daylight might be the most balanced point it's ever been, but it's still filled with some of the absolute most ridiculous shit you've ever seen. Background player being one of the #1 offenders right now.
Oh my god, that guy's game is bright.
For example, the old Made for This and Hope combo, which would make survivors just as fast as Huntress, or Medal of Man, where every 4th hit you took would be completely free. So in summary, Dead by Daylight is the worst balanced game of all time, and will continue to be. The developers will keep adding more perks, more killers, each more unbalanced than the last, and each one being a paid DLC. The classic League of Legends strategy of making broken champions and collecting fat paychecks when people want to play them. Make sure to like the video, and if you're asking why I play this game, let me say this. Some people like cock and ball torture, and I like playing Dead by Daylight from time to time. While one makes it nearly impossible to procreate, and the other is cock and ball torture, I'd like to remind you, the viewer, not to kink shame. Swag Money 69, signing out.
Total joke, I like it.
Well, wouldn't you know it, as I'm making this video, Behavior went and did a behavior thing, and did a incredibly busted rework for the twins. The way the twins used to work was you had 2 parts of the killer, Charlotte and Victor. Charlotte functions just like a normal M1 killer, but her power allowed her to control Victor, a tiny little gremlin that will hop right off her body, and could chase survivors very quickly. If you were healthy, Victor would latch onto you and make you injured, forcing the killer to have to control Charlotte again. And you couldn't use Victor unless you downed the survivor, or that survivor...
He's going to talk about the twins PTB where like Victor could just literally hit you and then instantly hit you again, like the dumbest shit ever.
She was somewhat like the opposite of Legion, where you always wanted to be
that never made it to live.
Pair up so you could kick Victor. Now there's somewhat of an opposite effect. In the PTB,
I am a more monster detected.
He gets a small cooldown on his attack, but then he can do it again, downing the survivor and giving control back to Charlotte. There is absolutely zero counterplay. I saw a clip of Otz, a popular Dead by Daylight content creator,
this is the PTB. You see it says test build in the top left.
10 seconds, with the survivor having absolutely no way of
Who thought this was a good idea,
That's the state of Twitch right now. Am I right about that? Absolutely. This one what I do is, you can customize compacts. I might customize compacts that replaces 25 with a picture of Legion, or with just a silhouette.
And are calling this the worst change that has ever been made.
This cannot go live. This is one of the worst things you've ever designed in the game's history. It is virtually zero counterplay.
Dude, like this was year 8 they did this.
Right now it's just in the PTB.
That was Houndmaster gameplay in the background.
Out of the PTB as well.
Another question, playing killers was fun a long time ago, but now it's only stressful. That's an opinion, a valid opinion, but that's an opinion. I used to love playing as a killer, win or lose, it was fun, but currently no matter what, it's just filled with stress and anger. Killers aren't feared anymore.
Here it comes.
Do you have any plans or ideas how you would like to improve the killer experience? Well, I would say maybe try Survivor for a bit. No, but it's true. I mean, change it up. Maybe you're just tired, you know, or play something else for a week. Try Civilization or something, just for a refreshing change. Balance is. I shouldn't be saying that. Should I be saying that? It's a good game. Just play that. No, Bjorn is telling me I shouldn't be saying that. Okay.
It always comes from the top down, not the bottom up. Like anytime you guys hear me like just shit on behavior, always know I'm shitting on them from the top down and not the bottom up. I'm sure there's many people at behavior that could balance the shit out of the game that have absolutely no voice at the company. And by the way, that's from RND Thursday. That's crazy. He didn't even like, he could literally make a part 2 and a part 3 to that video. That's like how bad the state of the gutter is with the game. Maybe he needs to get off Civ and play more DBD. Kote is like gone, I think, at this point. I'm fairly certain he's just enjoying the royalty checks and living off the glue.